welcome to Ladies Talking Business, the program that breaks down business to its simplest terms. I'm Aaron Ubani.
And I'm Edidiong Iwang. Today we'll be talking about taxation, who should pay taxes, why and when, and we'll also be helping you understand how the system works.
Here with us is Oluseun Akinrioye, a tax consultant. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
A recent report by PricewaterhouseCoopers and the World Bank showed that Nigeria ranked 171 of the 190 economies that were assessed in terms of the overall tax payment ranking. I know that this is obviously not good news because the government definitely needs our tax for things like infrastructure, health, education, and the rest of it. But then what we really need to understand, who should be paying taxes?
Okay, so to your question on who should be paying taxes, the thing is any individual or any Nigerian that is earning an income should pay taxes.
So do you mean that the person selling groundnuts should pay taxes?
Or a house help should pay taxes?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Once you earn any income, you have to pay taxes. That's what the law requires. That's what the law says.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But then, I mean, in Nigeria, that's clearly not the case. So is there anything to check all of this? Because I'm sure we have a lot of drivers, helps, cleaners that don't pay taxes. They probably, I'm sure there are even people working that don't have their tax identification numbers.
I mean, I pay my taxes. I don't know about you.
So, but what do we have to check that?
Okay, so the thing is, all these category of people you mentioned, they are in the informal sector of the economy. Okay. So to a large extent, the participation of the informal sector or bring the informal sector guys into the tax net has not been so good. So, and I know the government is really working towards ensuring that they increase the tax net and also try as much as possible to tax the informal sector guys. So it's something that is ongoing, even from the federal Inland Revenue Service and other state tax authorities. Mm-hmm. And I'm also aware that the recent national tax policy that was recently approved by the Federal Executive Council also had provisions to ensure that the informal sector, people in the informal sector, drivers, cleaners, as you mentioned, they look for a mechanism to tax them. Yeah. So
what are the types of taxes that we have, really?
Okay, so the type of taxes there are quite a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And I'll break it down into which tax authority or which level of the government is expected to administer each of those taxes. So I'll start from the local government level. So there are some taxes that the local government is expected to administer. Part of those taxes include things around your TV license, your radio license, your taxes that are really minimal like that, like your road taxes. If you're having a function and you want to use a part of the road, you need to get a license. Okay. A number of them like that. Then I'll go into taxes that should be administered by the state government. The number one on that list will be the personal income taxes, which is where you and I fall into.
Yes, exactly.
Right? From any salary, any income we earn, we're expected to pay personal income taxes. And there are other taxes that the state government still administers, like in Lagos State, for example, we have the land use charge, which recently created a number of controversies. We also have taxes around consumption taxes. Mm-hmm. We have road taxes. So some of those taxes are administered by the state government. We also have withholding taxes for individuals as well. That's also another tax that is administered by the state government. Then for federal taxes, which is expected to be administered or which is administered by the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Mm-hmm. So we have the company's income tax, which every registered company is expected to pay, or any business that has created a taxable presence in Nigeria, they're expected to pay that. We have the value-added taxes as well, which is the tax, which is an indirect form of taxes, which is taxes on the supply of goods and services. Yeah.
Okay. But I'm glad you talked about, the three tiers of government and the tax, because we were going to ask you how that works, but I'm glad you touched that. So people have heard of tax evasion and tax avoidance.
Exactly, yes.
And we know that one is a crime and one is not necessarily a crime.
Yeah.
Could you help us, just make it clear, like what is the difference between evasion and tax and avoidance?
Okay, so Tax evasion, for example, is when you are not paying taxes, when you're running from paying taxes without taking cognizance of what the law has provided, right? So that is illegal, absolutely illegal.
That's tax evasion
Tax
now.
evasion, yeah. So, but tax avoidance in itself, in simple terms, is when you're trying to capitalize on different opportunities in the tax law, when you're trying to use the different sections of the tax law, different provisions, to reduce the amount you pay in taxes.
So what are those provisions, sir?
There are a number of them, depending on the specific tax you're referring to. So, for example, the corporate taxes have different, Company Income Tax Act has different provisions that you can use to plan your taxes. The same way personal income tax has such provisions. On the top of my head, an example of that is your life assurance premium, right? So if you have life assurance premium, for example, the premium you pay is expected to be used as a deduction, is expected to be taken as a deduction from your taxable income. So that's a tax planning.
So can you increase your pension and then reduce the tax you pay, really?
Absolutely, absolutely. So
how does that work, really?
So, for example, I think recently the Lagos State government released a guideline on voluntary pension contribution. And the reason why they did that is because they realized a lot of Lagosians they've been taking advantage of using their voluntary pension contribution to reduce the amount of taxes they pay to the government. So what they eventually did was to create like some sort of restriction around, if you make a voluntary contribution this month, you can't by next month say you're going to withdraw it from the pension fund administrators, because that was the case before. That was what people were doing prior to that
so they were
regulation. Yeah.
Okay,
so in most times there are instances where the government tries to use regulation to block a particular abuse of a section of the law to reduce taxes.
Okay, but then can you tell us about the Tax Appeal Tribunal in a case where you are being charged with a case of tax evasion, but then I feel I shouldn't be charged for that?
I feel like you should be charged for that, because if you're supposed to pay your tax, so if you do not pay your tax,
but then there are sometimes when you feel maybe the tax that you're being charged for, your tax at the end of the day is a little too high for you, right?
Okay.
What can we do about it? What's the tax?
Okay, so there are two things you've mentioned. The first is tax evasion.
Yes.
That is illegal. That is a criminal offense, and everybody should pay their taxes.
But a case where you feel like that was not.
Okay, so in instances where maybe there is a dispute, right, between the taxpayer and the tax authority, that's where the Tax Appeal Tribunal you mentioned, that's where that will come in.
Okay.
So the way it works in Nigeria at the moment is we have different tax appeal tribunals in all the 6 geopolitical zones of the federation.
Okay.
So if in Lagos, as we are all in Lagos as we speak, you have a dispute with the tax authorities, expected that and you're unable to resolve that dispute, it's expected that either party can take the case to the Tax Appeal Tribunal for adjudication. Yeah.
Okay. So as an employee now, just like she said, if you say, okay, the tax is too much, how do you actually calculate the tax someone is supposed to pay? Because, I mean, like she said, if you feel like, okay, your tax is too much, and you decide, okay, I shouldn't be paying this because it's too much. How do you now calculate what you're supposed to pay? How much am I supposed to pay?
I mean, I know that some people pay,
yes. You know what, my company will decide it for me, and whatever they take out of my salary is fine.
Okay, so as an employee, for example, you know, we operate a pay-as-you-earn scheme, in which case the employer is expected to deduct at source. Now, coming to the question around how do you compute personal income tax? You can compute it yourself. You can actually compute it yourself. All you need to do is to take the tax laws, the provision that talks about tax computation of taxes, and you use those provisions, all the income you've earned either from salary or from business, other sources. So you put everything together to arrive at your gross income. Then you take your deductions as provided by the law. Then you apply the tax rates. There's a tax table rate in the law that you can apply. But other than that, if you're not someone that is numbers savvy, what you can also do is to reach out to tax consultants. So people like me, people like where I work, the organization I work for, that's what we do. We help people to compute their taxes to ensure that they pay the right amount of taxes.
Okay. Good thing you just mentioned the fact that you've been in this field for a very long time. How eager are people when it comes to paying of taxes and then companies? Is this something, oh my goodness, it's time to pay my tax? Okay.
Okay, so the thing is, all over the world, right? I've not seen any country or anywhere where people are happy to pay taxes, right? However, whether they're happy or not is an obligation, right? Tax payment is an obligation you have for residing in a particular state or in a particular country. So even if you're not happy about it, I understand the angle they are coming from, right? Mm-hmm. But what I will say is, even if, I mean, we can't directly see the impact of the taxes we're paying, the fact that we need to do our part of the bargain, pay the taxes, then the next thing we need to do as citizens is to ensure that we call our government to account, make them accountable, make them responsible, and it's a collective effort, right? We need to get to a stage where everybody is interested in what government is using, what government is using the taxes people are paying for. Okay. So we need to all get to that stage. Yes, we can't directly say it, but we need to continue to demand accountability from the states and from all the three tiers of government. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll take a break now. When we return, we'll talk about the implications of not paying tax.
Exactly. I pay my tax.
We'll see you in a moment. Don't go away.
All right. Welcome back. What are the implications of not paying your tax?
Okay, so the implications of not paying taxes is anyone that has refused to pay his or her taxes, it's criminal. I've mentioned that earlier. It's a criminal offense, and you'll be liable to interest and penalty on the amount you've not paid. So you're not just going to pay what you should pay. You also pay interest and penalty, which goes as much as...
Won't that cripple some people?
I mean, so and that's where I tell people that the cost of non-compliance is more than the cost of compliance. Yes. Because, for example, if, let's assume you're supposed to pay 1,000 naira for conversation's sake taxes, personal income taxes, and you refuse to pay, and the state government or the tax authorities come for an audit, they will, after ascertaining that 1,000, they will slam a penalty of an average of 21-22%, and an interest of 21-22%, and the penalty of 10%, which means you'll be paying like 1,003 to what you have refused to pay. In addition to the interest and penalty, another implication of not paying your taxes is that you can actually go to jail.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Right? The law actually provides for that because it's criminal, right? You can actually go to jail for not paying your taxes. Yeah.
I mean, I pay my tax, so I'm very...
Okay, but then one would ask, how easy is it to pay tax? You know, some of us, our companies pay tax for us. Okay. You know, so if something happens...
Our companies pay tax on our behalf.
On our behalf. Really? Okay, on our behalf. So for someone that is not in a company where, you know, they help them pay their tax, how easy is this for someone to pay their tax?
Okay, so the thing is, before I go into how easy it is to pay your taxes, one thing I just also need to mention is that in addition to the company paying your taxes on your behalf, you're also expected to file your personal income tax returns annually.
Oh.
Yes. It's a provision in the law.
Okay.
It's something I'm aware the state government is doing a lot of things to get people to file their returns. So yes, the employer has paid your taxes on your behalf. They've probably filed as a company. You're also expected that every year, at the end of the year, you should file your returns yourself. Now, going to the question of how easy it is to pay taxes, I think that's actually a big deal. Like, for example, I'll make reference to the World Bank ease of paying taxes report you mentioned the other time.
Yes.
So out of 190 countries that were assessed,
Nigeria was 171.
Exactly. We were at 182.
Okay.
Prior to last year.
Okay.
Then we moved 11 places to 171.
So that's supposed
So
to be.
which means we're just in like we're better. The ease of paying taxes is better in 19 countries compared to us, which is terrible. When we compare that statistics with neighboring countries, South Africa, for example, is like number 51 or 52. Ghana, Kenya, they're like 122 or 123. So it's actually difficult to pay taxes in Nigeria. Wow. And that's why, that's part of what we expect the tax authorities, the government, to concentrate on making it easy to pay taxes. Like, I should be able to pick my phone and just use the USSD code to pay my taxes. We need to get to a stage where that will be possible. I should be able to log into my my internet banking to pay taxes.
To make it easier, because when it's tedious, someone can just say,
it's just like double jeopardy. So I'm not happy I'm paying, and I also have to go through stress to pay.
I mean, I feel like people have a way of, it's more like you're giving people an opportunity to commit a crime when you're making the process to do something very tedious.
Yeah.
People tend to just move away from things like that.
So we hope, as time goes on, maybe by the time this year's report will be done, we hope that there will be an improvement to our ease of paying tax, because I'm aware the government is doing a lot. For example, the FRS recently introduced a number of e-services where you can file your returns online. Those are federal taxes, and you can pay your taxes online. So we expect that as that kicks off fully, that it will be easier to pay taxes, either as a corporate or as an individual.
Okay, yeah, so we spoke about VAT earlier, but I'm sure a lot of people don't understand this. So what's the difference between sales tax and VAT? Is there any difference? Okay, so
they are both indirect taxes, right? We have some countries where they don't have a VAT system, and they have what we call a sales tax, right? So, for example, in Nigeria, value-added tax is taxes on the supply of goods and services, right? So that's what we have in Nigeria. For example, we don't have a sales tax regime. But there are some countries where what they have is a sales tax regime, and they don't have a VAT regime. So in simpler terms, they can go interchangeably, right? But it's still the fact remains VAT is tax on supply.
So sometimes when you go shopping, you see that at the end of the day they have this VAT payment.
Exactly.
Interesting. And then in the report that PricewaterhouseCoopers as well as the World Bank did, we saw that there was a no refund policy for the time to obtain a refund for your VAT. How does that work? Why do we not have a refund policy? Because some other countries, I saw it right there, they had a refund policy.
Okay, so which is part of the challenges with our tax administration in Nigeria. What you just mentioned is part of the challenges with our tax administration in Nigeria. The law actually provides for a tax refund in instances where you have overpaid taxes. Okay. But you know everything about Nigeria, there are a lot of challenges administrative-wise. Anything the government has collected is actually difficult to give it out. So there is a provision for refund. It's just that in practice, it's been difficult to administer. Like, for example, if you travel out of the country and you buy a lot of things when you're leaving the airport, you're supposed to a lot of countries they will give you a refund, right? Yeah. But in Nigeria, I've never seen that happen. So the same way, even for corporate organizations, when they pay taxes, when they overpay taxes, it's been difficult to get refunds. So we hope as time goes on, as our tax administration improves, we hope that the tax refund system will start working in Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
Let's hope for that.
Yeah.
Could you fill us in on the transfer pricing regulations?
Okay, you mean the recent regulation? Yes. Okay, so I think about 2, 3, or 4 weeks ago, the Federal Internal Revenue Service released a regulation on transfer pricing. Okay. So breaking it down, I think we should start from what is transfer pricing.
Exactly.
Right? So transfer pricing is a concept in taxes that says that any transaction between related parties, right? So if we're related parties and we have transactions among each other, the transaction should be rightly priced. Okay. That's the meaning of transfer price, which means if someone that is not related to that company wants to do a similar transaction, the pricing between the related party and the non-related party should practically be similar. That's what transfer pricing means. So to the recent regulation that was released by FRS, what that regulation is saying is the regulation is just to improve compliance level of taxpayers as far as transfer pricing is concerned. The number of penalties that were introduced from the regulation, for example, if you have transactions with related parties and you're not filing your transfer pricing returns, there is, I think, a 10 million naira penalty. And I think 10,000 or 25,000.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. So there are a number of regulations in that, a number of provisions in that regulation. But the summary of everything is just to ensure that transactions are rightly priced, and people that have related party transactions, they do their full compliance as provided by the law.
Okay. All right, and then finally, you need to break down one financial term for us, maybe in taxation, something.
Something that you would just want people to understand more.
Okay. So what should, let me quickly think about something.
Okay.
I think what I'll say is budgeting. I'll let me quickly break down budgeting, right? And the reason why I feel I should break down budgeting is because it affects all of us. So I think, budgeting is when you're trying to plan your expenses, right? Your expenses and your income for a particular period of time when you're trying to plan it. And it's expected that most organizations, they have a budget. Countries have budgets, and it's also expected that as individuals we should have budgets, which is a form of managing our personal finance. Yeah. So I think, so you're meant to have your incomes, your total income for a period, your total expenses, and by the time you put everything, the two together, you realize whether you're going to have a surplus or a deficit. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Oluwaseun Akinimore, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it on Ladies Talking Business this week. See you same time next week. Have a good day. I'm Edidion Iwang.
I'm Irene Ubani. Bye.